Time to do it. Time to do it.
What's going on, guys? You're back with the DS Files. This is Don, I'm Skepis, and we're here to bring you digestible science. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about metabolism. We're going to talk about how metabolism influences weight regulation and give you guys an understanding of what this means in terms of our calorie expenditure on a daily basis and our fat loss and muscle gaining efforts, as well as break down some of the metabolism myths that you may have heard. So Lyndon, talk to us. What are the two things that primarily influence our metabolism, and what is the definition of metabolism?
Alright, so metabolism is basically just the energetic cost to do all the functions and processes that occur in your body. Metabolism, it's just like energy in, energy out at the end of the day. It's expenses that your body has. So in order to maintain the lean 85 kilos that Jacob is, there's a certain amount of, that may cost a certain amount to his body. You don't just get to keep something for free. If he doesn't pay his body the amount of energy that it needs, it will sacrifice what he's got. The two biggest factors contributing to our metabolism is how big our body is and then how active we are with that body. If you are a very active 60 kilos, yes, you may be active and you may burn a lot of calories, but if you're a very active 80 kilos, it costs more energy to move around something that's heavier. So that is those two factors play the biggest role in how fast your metabolism is, or how much energy you burn.
And one of the factors that influence our body weight is the energy that we consume and the food that we consume. So some important things to consider is that the drive to eat food will outweigh the drive to undereat. For most people, in particular, this is the case in the 21st century, with food availability being extremely high, the social, environmental and lifestyle factors that we have today. People are more likely to overeat than they are to undereat, and this will then affect the amount of energy that they expend on a daily basis. And when we talk about energy expenditure, there are typically three components that make up how many calories we burn on a daily basis. The first is our resting metabolic rate. So our resting metabolic rate is simply the amount of energy it costs our body to survive if we were lying down flat on a bed just breathing. So functions like the brain, the heart, the liver, kidneys, all of these things that we need to just survive. The other one is the thermic effect of feeding. So the thermic effect of feeding is simply when we consume food, that costs the body energy to break it down. So fat has a zero thermic effect of feeding, so it doesn't cost the body any energy to store and digest fat. Carbohydrates are typically around 10 to 15% of the calories that we consume are lost through digestion, and protein has the highest thermic effect of feeding, with nearly 20 to 30% of the calories lost through digestive processes. So this also contributes to our calorie burn on a daily basis. And the one factor that we're going to be talking about today is our physical activity thermogenesis and non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So the calories that we burn through formal activity, and then the calories we burn by doing tasks that aren't necessarily formal exercise, but more than lying in a bed flat. So me standing here talking and moving my hands, this is contributing to my non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this plays a really big role in our metabolic output and the amount of calories we burn that people often overlook. So Lyndon, do you want to add anything to the calories in and the energy out equation that we spoke about in terms of metabolism?
Yeah, I just think, as you said, Jacob, people don't understand how strong, from a biological perspective, it is to overeat food. We need to understand that our body is just this evolutionary adaptive mechanism, and in years gone by, over the centuries and centuries that our body has evolved, food has often been scarce. And now we're in a time where most of us are fortunate enough to be able to afford food, and food is readily available to us, but our body doesn't understand this. It is always preparing for times of famine and starvation, when you're going to go through the ice age and you're trapped in a cave before a big fucking elephant or whatever saber-toothed tiger eats you or some shit like that.
You fight an acorn.
Oh yeah, from Ice Age. This biological drive, combined with increasingly mechanized behavior and activity, such as or lack of activity. So, for example, in years gone by, if you wanted to wash your dishes, you had to wash your dishes by hand, or same with your washing or your car. Now we have drive-through car washers, we have dishwashers, we have washing machines, and all these things do these tasks for us. Now, this doesn't seem like a big deal to us who have only known those things, but to our body, this is an increasing lack of activity. This is one of the reasons why we've seen the rise in obesity. Probably the second biggest reason we've seen a rise in obesity is how cheap food has become.
Some great points on how these environmental factors have influenced our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and some other important considerations that influence how many calories we burn through just movement are also our genetics. So there is very much a genetic predisposition or component to non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and I'm sure you all know that skinny person who, no matter what they eat, they're just skinny. And that largely comes down to NEAT. So when they overfeed, they will become more active and start burning more calories, and they are an outlier in that sense, because most people, when they overfeed, NEAT is actually reduced and lethargy and less calorie burn results. And also occupation plays a big role. If you're very active and your work is quite laborious, then you will burn a lot of calories. But however, most of us now are sedentary, again, like Lyndon said, due to the mechanistic nature of living in the 21st century. And some important considerations for NEAT are that we need to be conscious of how this plays a role in metabolism. Because often we think that when we gain weight that it's just our diet, or it's genetics, whatever the case may be. And while this is mostly true, we often overlook and neglect the importance that NEAT plays and burning calories without formally exercising. So being conscious of this is something that we advise to our clients, and is extremely important for weight maintenance, weight loss, and achieving your physique related goals. So some strategies to increase your NEAT can be really simple, such as parking your car further away from work, taking the stairs. What are some other strategies?
Walking your dog. Like, there's been some very strong evidence that they've studied people who own pets and own dogs are often so much healthier and of a lower weight and lower BMI than people who don't own pets and dogs. Simply because they feel like they need to walk the dog, and then when they walk the dog, they're increasing the activity, and little bits of activity add up so much over time, just as little bits of food add up so much over time. People often think that exercise is the key to their weight loss goals, and don't get me wrong, exercise is great, but probably activity is where you need to be looking. Just activity in general. It doesn't have to be going to the gym. NEAT really is the missing link in people's weight loss programs. A hard exercise session may burn anywhere from, say, 100 to 150 calories. Like, that's quite an intense exercise session. Whereas your liver will burn probably 300 calories a day just by doing its own function. So as we can see there, exercise really doesn't burn that many calories in comparison to other things. Yeah, so NEAT will contribute significantly to total daily energy expenditure, and much more than structured exercise.
So like Lyndon said, physical activity, although it is extremely important, is not as energy costly as what people think. And this is largely due to the fact that the duration and intensity and the volumes that which we need to perform formal exercise to see a significant calorie burn are quite unrealistic. You would need to be performing moderate to high intensity cardio or resistance training for 1 to 2 hours to see even 200 to 300 calories burn. There really isn't a hell of a lot of calories expended in formal activity. And again, because the intensity is usually higher, we can't perform it or sustain it for as long, so the calorie burn will be less. Whereas in contrast to non-exercise activity thermogenesis, from sitting to standing, well, we can stand a lot longer than what we can run on a treadmill or lift weights, which is why focusing your attention on NEAT can really improve your metabolism. Some important things to note, however, that when we perform formal cardio, and this is an issue a lot of people have with their Fitbit and their tracking device in terms of monitoring their calorie burn through activity, is that they think that that's just going to add to their total daily energy expenditure, when in reality it substitutes the amount of calories that would have otherwise been burned if you weren't doing that cardio. So for example, I might burn 50 calories just sitting here for an hour talking to you guys, but if I go do cardio, I might burn 150. I don't add 150 calories to my total daily energy expenditure, I only add the difference, which is 100. So that's a big mistake a lot of people make when monitoring their formal activity. And another one is they don't understand the implications that activity has, like Lyndon mentioned, on our energy expenditure and our hunger after that activity is performed. And this is called the compensatory effect. So when we perform moderate to high intensity activity, there is compensation in metabolism. And what that means is NEAT will typically drop if you perform a hard leg session, where you're not going to be standing on your feet all day or running around, you're going to be sitting on the couch. And you'll probably be hungry, which can again increase the biological drive to consume food, which makes weight regulation very difficult to manage. So these are two really important considerations to have if you are monitoring your formal activity. And now we're going to talk to you guys about some metabolism myths, and we're going to debunk those myths. So the first myth is metabolic damage, and I'm sure you've all heard this term. It was popularized back in the mid-2000s and really created some concerns in the fitness industry, in response to dieting and people having damaged metabolisms because they've dieted and then really struggled to lose any more weight once they've been dieting for a certain period of time, or they've lost a significant amount of weight. And Lyndon's going to break this one down for you guys. So Lyndon, hit it out the park.
Alright, so the idea, you can't damage your metabolism, just straight up, I want to get that out there. Metabolism is just, again, the energy cost to your body to maintain its own functions. You can get what's called adaptive thermogenesis. So this is just your body becoming thrifty and just becoming efficient at performing processes with less of an energy cost. So where this whole metabolic damage idea came from is, say, you'd get an 80 kilo male who may maintain his body weight on 2,500 kilos. Then they'd cut his calories and diet him down to, say, 75 kilos. Then they'd put him back on 2,500 calories and couldn't work out why his metabolism was slower, why he started gaining weight again. Maybe even disproportionately more than, he should have. What has happened here is when you are smaller and you lose weight, you are taking up less space, your body doesn't need as much energy to maintain itself. Like if you go and buy a big block of land, you gotta pay a fuck ton of money to be able to maintain that. If you buy a small little, square of grass, like, fuck, it doesn't, you can maintain that without much cost. There's one reason your metabolism slows down and becomes damaged, or whichever term you wanna use. The second is just when you're eating less food, that again contributes to less energy out. So as Jacob talked about, with the thermic effect of food, if I eat 100 grams of protein, this equates to 400 calories. And with a 20% thermic effect of feeding from protein, 80 calories of that original 400 will be lost due to digestion. So I like to think of this as, it's the GST of food essentially. It's the tax that comes out of food. So there's a high tax rate with protein. So when you're eating less protein and less food, your body doesn't have to burn as much energy in order to digest that food. So you are losing energy out in that sense as well. However, as we've spoken about, NEAT is a massive driver in people's total daily energy expenditure. This is the major component where adaptive thermogenesis comes into play. So when you're sitting at 80 kilos and you're being fed either maintenance or surplus of calories, you will feel very energetic. You'll sit nice and upright in your posture. You'll feel like going for a kick of the footy if your mates offer, or if your mum says take the bin out. As much as it's a pain in the ass, you still do it. But once you diet down to 75 or start pushing at the bottom end of your body fat settling point, adaptive thermogenesis will really kick in and NEAT will plummet. Yeah, so once you're dieted down, you're eating less food, so you have less energy. You're probably doing some cardio, you're probably exercising hard and expending a lot of energy out in that way. So your body's really going to try and conserve energy when it's not in the gym, and it's going to make you slouch, it's going to make you, sit on the couch. When your mum says, take the bin out, you're thinking, fuck mum, like I did that last night, like how do we even produce this much rubbish? It's just, all these sorts of things really do add up, and NEAT is where we've seen the primary contributor to this metabolic damage. When you look at the science, and even in practice we see it, it's very evident where these energy losses are coming from, and current research is extremely strong in this area. Yes, the idea of metabolic damage was, scary a few years ago. Current scientific evidence shows that once somebody has returned to, say, that 80 kilos that they were originally, and they've recovered all their body mass, their metabolism will be the same. So the idea of someone's metabolism being damaged is false. If you start at 80 kilos, diet down to 75 and then get back to 80 kilos, metabolism will be the same. It hasn't become damaged. However, what people need to understand, if you want to diet down from 80 kilos to 75 kilos and then maintain 75 kilos, then you just have a reduced metabolism because you are smaller.
So it has been commonly stated, and many people do think that if they build muscle, they're going to burn all these calories and be able to eat all this food and get leaner just because they've built a couple of kilos of muscle. But it isn't as simple as that. So Lyndon, tell us why it's not that simple.
Muscle is, yes, it's more metabolically active than fat, but it is not that much more metabolically active than fat. A kilo of fat takes a certain amount of calories to maintain, and a kilo of muscle takes a certain amount of calories to maintain. The benefits of exercise and adding muscle is that the process of adding muscle burns calories. If you want to add 2 kilos of muscle, you've probably got to be in the gym for 6 months. If you're doing things very well, you've probably gained 2 kilos of muscle in 6 months. So just the act of exercising hard for 6 months to gain that 2 kilos of muscle is a significant calorie burn. Also, in that 6 month time, you've gotten stronger. You may have started off bench pressing 40 kilos. Now you can bench press 65 kilos. When you can bench press 65 kilos for the same amount of reps and sets, you are stronger and you can expend more energy, you can handle more volume. You have a higher workload tolerance to work. Also, if you slowly let your body weight creep up, say you've gone from a skinny 70 kilos, you've added 2 or 3 kilos of muscle, that costs more energy to move 73 kilos around than it does at 70. So, whilst with some exercise and adding some muscle, you don't become this, energy churning machine where, as I said, you can eat all the Big Macs that you want and, you still look like Popeye at the end of the day. So whilst there's probably some errors in thinking in how beneficial adding muscle mass is to your metabolism, that's not to neglect the fact that it is beneficial. It may not be the holy grail to, increasing your metabolism through the roof, but the fact that you add some muscle will allow you to lift heavier and do more volume in the gym, which burns more calories, and the fact that you will be heavier, adding to your BMR, which burns more calories.
And another really big myth is that people think they have a slow metabolism. And hopefully now you guys understand the mechanisms behind metabolism and what affects how many calories we burn per day. Now, we know that body mass is one of the primary drivers of energy expenditure, and the heavier we are, the more calories we burn. And this is why most people who think they have a slow metabolism really don't have a slow metabolism. They are just very poor at reporting either their energy intake or their calorie expenditure and aren't creating a calorie deficit. There is no such thing as a slow metabolism. The people who have the slowest metabolisms are typically the really small, skinny females who are under 45 kilos, and they're gonna have to eat, under 1,200 calories to create a calorie deficit because their frame is so small. They don't take up much space and they have a very small cost to sustain their tiny bodies. So the myth of having a slow metabolism isn't true, because a bigger person weighs more, which means that their body's going to burn more calories each day. They're typically going to be eating more food to be able to sustain that body weight, which again increases the thermic effect of feeding on the energy outside. So their metabolism is quite high due to those factors. However, why they feel they have a slow metabolism is they may be one of the individuals who is genetically predisposed to feeling lethargic and having a reduction in non-exercise activity thermogenesis in response to overfeeding. So when they eat a meal, they might feel very lethargic. And again, there are so many environmental and lifestyle factors that influence our activity to contribute to our total daily energy expenditure. But from the metabolic process standpoint, bigger people have better metabolisms, period.
Now, where the difference primarily comes in, as Jacob spoke about, is their response to either under or overfeeding. There's been one study that I was just looking at just the other day where participants were overfed calories by 1,000 calories over their calorie needs to maintain their body weight. One of the participants gained up to 8 kilos from that overfeeding, whereas another participant only gained 1.2. So these people were overfed to the same degree, but as we can see there's a massive inter-individual difference in their genetic response to how much their body compensates and fights back this overfeeding.
So in closing, why do we get fat? Why do we gain weight? It's not necessarily your damaged metabolism, a slow metabolism. It's not the type of foods that you eat, even though they may contribute to the thermic effect of feeding differently. It's in large going to come down to creating an imbalance of energy. That means you're consuming more calories than what you're expending per day. And what we hope you guys take away from this video is that the biggest contributor that we have control of in terms of our energy expenditure is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So being more active on a daily basis without formally exercising at high intensities, that's going to be quite mentally exhausting. So we hope you learned a lot from that video, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did and found it useful, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll speak to you all next time.